This is a talk that I recently did, and it's titled Mediumship, Past, Present and Future. In it I compare mediumship of the past with mediumship of the present, and I offer some of my thoughts on the future direction of mediumship. The talk lasts for about 30 minutes, and it's followed by comments, questions and answers. I do hope that you enjoy it. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely lovely to be here. Lovely to be able to talk to you this evening. I will try and restrict how long I talk for because I've been known to go on for quite some time, so I'm trying to keep myself on a timer tonight. So the topic I want to talk to you about tonight is mediumship, past, present and future. And a few of you will not have any idea who I am, but so I just thought before I get into the meat of the content, what I want to talk about, I thought it might be nice if I explain a bit of my background so you know where I'm coming from and my approach, because obviously we're all different, we're all going to have different opinions. We'll have a fabulous discussion afterwards, I'm sure. And I know some of you in this room have been in the movement considerably longer than I have. And I'm a relative newcomer in that I came to spiritualism in 2001, began my own development in 2001. I have been a card-carrying spiritualist since 2002. I think I joined the union in 2002. And I began working as a medium in 2003, so a little bit of a time on platform now. I began teaching within the churches in 2005. I then began teaching online on SNUI in its relative infancy in 2010, back in the day when we used to type it in. I had to type it in to an audience and they had to type in back their replies. And it progressed onto being audio, then it progressed on to being webinar, and then it progressed on to being video and the likes of Zoom that we now have. So I've been teaching online for many, many years now. I do hold awards from the union, CSNU, in demonstrating and speaking. I did go through the tutor training scheme at the Arthur Findlay College, where I'm now appointed as an approved tutor. I have been interested in great mediums of the past for a long time. I began researching it way back. I used to love going into the Britain Memorial Museum at the college and wading through all sorts of things there. And I've been researching great mediums of the past since about 2008. I built a website on Gordon Higginson called the Gordon Higginson Tribute website. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's very interesting. I think that was built in 2009 or 2010. I've run multiple courses and classes on great mediums of the past. I must have spoken about a good dozen of them, maybe more now. So I've got a passion for mediumship, a passion for our great mediums, quite a bit of knowledge of a lot of the old mediums as well. But obviously you have to understand that I wasn't around in the past. I can only access it through what I've read, what I've researched. So I wasn't around when some of the finest mediums of old were there. I should also say any opinion I present here this evening, this is a disclaimer, is mine and mine alone. It does not belong to any institution I may or may not be a member of, or any organisation, because some of what I say tonight may be completely at odds with what you think or what other people within the organisations think. So therefore, that's what I want to talk about. So to begin with, I was thinking of calling the discussion this evening, the talk, was mediumship of the past better than mediumship of today? But in the end, I went for the title of mediumship past, present and future, because I thought we could compare and contrast mediumship of the past versus mediumship of the present. And then I would give you some of my thoughts about where mediumship in the future may go or may not go. So for me, mediumship of the past, was mediumship of the past better than mediumship of today? And there's a part of me that wants to instantly say absolutely. But I'll put a caveat, a caution on that. And the caution is we have a lot of information on the greatest mediums from the past. We don't have very much information on the lousy ones, the average ones. So all we can really compare and contrast is the finest mediums of the past to the finest mediums of today. And that's presuming that we know who the finest mediums of today are and they're in the public domain in the spotlight. But in the past we had wonderful mediums like Estelle Roberts, Helen Hughes, Gordon Higginson, to name just a few. We had wonderful mediums who would work in places like the Royal Albert Hall, in halls up to 10,000 people. And just today, I'm actually just putting together a transcript of a test demonstration Gordon Higginson did in 1959. He'd been accused of fraud, so he was taken along to a church he'd never been to. Everything was written down that he said, all the evidence, and the number of first names, middle names and surnames he got accurate the number of places, addresses, actual house numbers he got accurate, the level of detail in his demonstration is like nothing I have ever seen any modern medium produce. So it was taken down shorthand, it was a test, he didn't know he's being tested, but they published it verbatim in Psychic News, and the quality is phenomenal. Similarly, I've got transcripts of some of Helen Hughes' work. Yet again, the detail was phenomenal. Both Helen Hughes and Gordon Higginson, we have to understand, were what I call true clairaudient mediums. And true clairaudient mediums are mediums who hear spirit and can repeat what they hear, and it can be devastatingly accurate, as opposed to what I call perceived clairaudience, which is where our mind likes to work with creating words within our mind. When someone truly hears clairaudience, it is devastatingly accurate. So similarly again, Estelle Roberts, she was capable of that. Great mediums like Joe Benjamin, mediums like Ursula Roberts, we had a great number of mediums, Ina Twig of the past, whose mediumship, the evidence was phenomenal. So I would say from what I've read, from the transcripts I've had access to, from the data I've seen, the top caliber, the top cream of mediums of the past were better than mediums of today. And they're the ones I've researched. So that's... Now, can I say that the lower rungs of mediumship of the past was any better? The very bottom rung was any better? The answer is no. And I've got some wonderful articles from 1939 in Psychic News and Two Worlds where people were bemoaning how lousy the standard of church mediumship was and how bad the standard of your average run-of-the-mill medium is. So the same conversations we have today have been taking place for the last 80 years, basically. But all we can really compare and contrast is the finest mediums within our movement. So that's one of the things we have to look at. So if we look at the finest, what made them better? What was better in the past compared to the present? Why have we got better mediums? My own belief is the development methods of the past were different, and the development methods of the past helped produce good quality mediums. They had a lot of home circles. There were circles within churches as well, but the predominant circles were home circles or circles within churches. You couldn't really go on a course or a workshop. You were generally being trained with people around you, and they were lucky. They had sitters who sat in circles, just given their energy, their love, their power to develop people. If you go to a circle or a class in today's era, no one's there to help develop anybody else. We're all there to be developed at once. The power is going to be spread amongst a lot more people compared to great mediums of the past. And Gordon Higginson was obviously trained by his mother, Fanny Higginson. And some of the things that I read about her teaching methods were fabulous. People had to be there before her circle, 20 minutes before it started. Before the circle began, they had to be in a good state of attunement with spirit. She had a cane. If you weren't in a good state of attunement, you got hit with a cane and that was it. You were gone home. If you weren't there in the right place, in the right state of attunement, in the right state of mind, you weren't allowed. You were sent home packing, which is wonderful, isn't it? She was a real tough cookie. Talk about discipline, talk about dedication. You were expected to learn to form a relationship, to sit with spirit, to sit and attune and form that relationship even before you were allowed to develop. And I think some of those aspects of the past still have a huge amount of relevance to today, and we forget about them at our peril. So the development methods of the past, I know some mediums and teachers who say, oh, that's the past, leave it in the past. We need to focus upon modern teachings for the modern era. And I say, but actually modern teachings aren't delivering the caliber of mediums we had in the past. So let's try and bring from the past what works, and let's also add to it in the present. I believe we have to bring the two together. We can't isolate the past and isolate the present. We need to learn from it. When we look at the mediums of the past and we look at the finest mediums, they had certain qualities that made them wonderful mediums. All of them were true spiritualists. All of them, spiritualism was their religion. Their mediumship was a part of their religious work. It was a part of service to the Great Spirit God, service to humanity, service to the two worlds, and they worked from that place of service. There was no commercial gain back in the day. Back in the day, our great mediums did not work for money. They didn't get paid money. None of them died rich. None of them were millionaires. The concept of the millionaire medium, the concept of the TV star medium did not exist. Not possible. They worked for the movement, for publicity, for propaganda within our movement of spiritualism for free. I know Gordon Higginson, I was just reading in the article that he did 120 services, publicity meetings up and down the country in a year for the SNU. That's one every 3 days on average. Think about that. Travelling up and down the country to different churches, centres, town halls. That's a heck of a lot. Similarly, I know Maurice Barbanel and Helen Hughes. They did hundreds in a year as well. They were committed. They were dedicated. And as I say, there was no commercial gain. They were in front of an audience of 1,000 or 10,000, but they didn't get paid. They got their expenses if they were lucky. There was no such thing as a theatre medium with a promoter on tour. That didn't happen. So the lack of commercial gain played a big part. And Gordon said he was offered a great deal of money to do readings for famous people or a great deal of money to do a sitting for people. And he refused it because he said he knew the direction that would take his mediumship and he didn't want it. If he recognised if he started to hire his mediumship out to the highest bidder, that would create a problem for him. So he didn't do it. So for me, that's quite fascinating as well when we look at that. And when we look at the qualities they had a passion as well for their work. You know, they worked to the highest standards. Their work spoke for itself. They may have been famous, but they never sought fame. They gained the fame through their work. That's what they got. Their work involved a great deal of sacrifice. I know Helen Hughes, her husband, was ill at home, was near his deathbed, and she was still touring up and down the country working for spiritualism because it was so important to her. It was the greatest thing in her life, even to the extent of not being with close family. And I know Gordon Higginson was the same. He, a lovely story of Gordon Higginson jumping out of a window. He was locked in by his partner Frank Tams because he wasn't well and he wasn't meant to be serving a church, and he climbed out a window and shimmied down a drain pipe to go and serve a demonstration, a huge demonstration. And even the day his partner Frank Tams passed, he was working with Coral Polge in front of an audience of thousands that evening, and still he went on and did it because the work came first. The work always came first. We don't let anything else get in the way of work. They had that dedication. And they were spiritual people. They were all spiritual people. They developed the spiritual aspect of self to a very high standard. For me, I personally believe we've lost a lot of that in the current day. I don't know a huge number of teachers who really push the spiritual development of self. I do personally, and I think it's vitally important. And I do know a number of teachers who do, but when we look at the vast majority of teachers, most people are teaching mechanics, most people are teaching you mechanisms, but they're not talking about you spiritualizing self. And I believe unless we spiritualize ourselves, how can we truly unfold the potentials that exist within us? Unless we're truly touching that aspect of self that is of spirit, how can we truly bring to the fore all that we are capable of? I don't believe we can. So that's what I think was better in the past. So what do I think is better in the present? Because we have to compare and contrast. So right now, I believe that we have a great deal more opportunity with mediumship, especially right now with coronavirus, ironically. Ironically, coronavirus has moved everything online, or a great deal online, and it's created a great deal more opportunity. So I believe worldwide at this moment in time, there are more people interested in spiritualism and mediumship than ever before, particularly mediumship. And I believe that technology offers us a huge amount of opportunity and reach. This can now be broadcast all around the world. Wherever you are in the world, you can log in, you can watch good mediums work, you can log into services. I know the SNUI Divine Service has had hundreds of people watching it. They had to increase their room to 500 people to accommodate all who want to see it from all over the world, which is fabulous, fantastic. We're able to create teachings that now can reach huge audiences. The Arthur Findlay College has had to go online. It's now doing classes online. The SNUI has been doing classes online since probably 2009, I believe, or before even. And these classes can reach people all over the world. So we've got so much access through technology at this moment of time. So many barriers in the past. In the past, if you wanted to go and learn mediumship, you had to go in person to your local church centre, or if you want to go further afield to the Arthur Findlay College or the SAGB, where I lived locally, or other churches, and sometimes occasional seminars in different locations. But now we can, I know you can go to the Arthur Findlay College from the comfort of your own home. You can have teachings in the States with the Journey Within, with other good quality organisations who are offering really good quality teaching. And for me, to remove that barrier is so much more wonderful. And I know SNUI has put on a huge amount of free access teachings, which takes quality teachings to many people. And I think that's a huge positive. I also believe that social media is another huge benefit for us. Some of you may dislike things like Facebook. Some of you may dislike things like YouTube. But we can record, like some of the SNUI recordings, the teachings are put on their YouTube channel and can reach thousands upon thousands of people. There is no limit. They're there for eternity, provided we keep the channel open. So I believe that certainly the social media is now allowing teachings to really spread so much further. And I know that when I think back to my own development in 2001, the opportunities now are much greater. It's much more opportunities completely than there were back then. I think as well we've progressed with things like education schemes. I know the SNU's got a huge amount of education schemes, and the awards have progressed, the PASS, the CSNU, the DSNU, the teacher training awards as well. A lot of the award schemes and the education schemes have really come on, which I think is a huge positive, a huge benefit as well. We've seen now as well a change that organisations are now offering progressive teaching, and many individual mediums are offering progressive teaching and mentorship schemes. I know the SNU offers a mentorship and it offers a route to the CSNU. And to be able to go with one tutor repeatedly over the course of a couple of years is very helpful. I remember I used to go to the Arthur Findlay College back in the early 2000s, and you'd go on a course, and if you were lucky, you'd be split up into beginner, intermediate and advanced, but there was no guarantees, and sometimes it was just mixed groups. Sometimes you go on a course hoping to be with a tutor, they wouldn't be there, you get another tutor. You often lacked continuity. So I think that now is very, very helpful for students to have that kind of progressive training. So I think that's another huge benefit we see with mediumship training at this moment in time. So what has got worse then with the present? Because it's not all roses, it's not all positivity in my view. And as I say, these are my beliefs, you're welcome to disagree with me. So for me, I would say that mediumship is now no longer religious. It's now no longer so closely associated with spiritualism. Now, I'm a card carrying spiritualist. If you saw my arm off, it would show spiritualism through and through. So I love spiritualism, but I know that people around the world in many countries don't have spiritualist churches. Many people are interested in mediumship, but have no interest in any religion. So we live in a more secular world where a lot of people are moving away from religion. So that lack of association with the religion of spiritualism does sadden me personally, because I am a spiritualist. And when I look at our mediums of old, they were spiritualists through and through. It was greater work, greater service. So if we take that out of it, for me, it begins to take mediumship, it begins to lose some of its purpose to touch souls, some of its purpose to bring healing, some of its purpose to awaken us to our true nature, to awaken us to a greater understanding of life itself, both within this world and the spirit realm. Something else that I feel has got worse is a commercialism. Now, as I said, mediums of old, it wasn't commercial. Probably in the late 70s and 80s, we had mediums like Doris Collins, Doris Stokes, who began to do theatre tours, began to become a well-known mediums on TV, and that started the unfoldment of it. We went through a period in about late 90s, 2000, where you had people like John Edward on TV, Colin Fry, James Van Prague, various other mediums, Tony Stockwell. And for me, that was a huge positive for us, in that it brought what I would call church-type mediumship into a wider audience.
I know Colin Fry, that was his aim with Sixth Sense, was to bring church mediumship and try and portray it on TV. And I think it worked and worked well. But the downside is now a lot of people want to be those TV mediums. A lot of people want that fame, that fortune. They want mediumship as a career. They want to give up their day job and go and become a medium and earn a stack of money from it. And for me, that somehow takes away some of the sacred and spiritual nature of mediumship. Also, social media, I said, was a huge benefit, but it's also a huge negative for me right now with mediumship. And I'll tell you why. Because for me, with social media, there's a lot of noise on social media, whether that's Facebook, whether that's YouTube. I myself have a YouTube channel, so I should declare an interest because I do have a YouTube channel myself. But there's a lot of content on YouTube that gets a lot of views that is not good. I'll give you an example. There's a lady who's got about 140,000 views for a class on mediumship. And when I Googled classes on mediumship about a year ago, it was number one, 140,000 views. She said in the early part of this class that if you did trance mediumship, it was dangerous and it would kill you. If you did trance mediumship, you would die. Now, as a trance medium myself, who's been doing trance mediumship for over 10 years, gone to trance hundreds of times, I'm still alive. I'm still testimony to it being untrue. So, crazy teaching really when you think about it. But a lot of people hear that and believe it because they don't know better. It's dangerous content. Another one I saw was that if you've got to connect to spirit but not blend or merge with spirit, because if you blend or merge with spirit, it's very dangerous for you. Now hang on a minute, how can you connect to the spirit world as a medium and not be blending with them? You can't. So yet again, there's these teachings that I find are just, and the problem is when someone Googles mediumship or puts mediumship into social media, you get what the algorithm within the social media determines you should see. You don't get necessarily the sensible teachings. They usually appear a bit further down the page. You often get the sensationalist stuff at the top, the people who know how to work the algorithm. So social media, there's a lot of noise, a lot of dross. Finding quality content amongst it can be a challenge. And a lot of people, their first experience of mediumship will be Googling it, typing it in, seeing what they get. So that's a challenge for me. Another challenge that we face that has been happening since 1940, as I said, is poor quality mediumship, wherever that may be, wherever in the world it may be. I have students who tell me that the quality of mediumship in their local area is awful. It's just psychic messages. There's no evidence, whether that's in the US, Canada, Australia. I hear the same thing said many times. I'm sure there's wonderful churches in all these areas where it doesn't happen. But equally within the UK, I hear people talking about it within their local church. That often the booking secretaries will get people on platform who will get bums on seats. They get entertainers. They get stand-up comedians. They get people who go around the whole room and give everyone a psychic snippet. So everyone goes home with something. But are they serving spirit? Are they bringing the evidence of spirit? Are they proving survival? Are they demonstrating the reality of the afterlife day in, day out? Not necessarily. So that's another challenge we face as well, I feel, at this moment in time, that venues, churches, centres, they want to get people in. They want to get their numbers up. And sometimes the person who does that may not necessarily be the world's greatest medium. So I've seen it myself in our own church and various other churches. Sometimes you get somebody along and they fill the church. The church is packed to the gills. But there may not be the level of mediumship or quality of mediumship we desire, that we want to see. So that's pretty much what I feel is not so good at this moment in time. So I'm very much old school. I like mediumship to be done properly. I like mediumship to have evidence. I like mediums to be well developed. I like mediums to bring forward the presence, the evidence, bring forward the power of spirit to touch people, to awaken people. That for me is what mediumship is about. So that makes me old school, I guess. So there's your past, there's your present. What of the future? And for me, my view of the future is that right now we stand at a crossroads. With mediumship, we're at a crossroads. And here's why I feel that. We could get mediumship being dumbed down. We could go to the lowest common denominator, where everyone gets all their information from relatively poor quality teachings on the internet, from social media. We get people who train badly, who believe themselves to be teachers, who go out to train other people badly. And we get a huge plethora of people out there who don't really understand what mediumship's about and don't work to the highest caliber. We get churches who need to stay open. And right now with COVID, it's not easy. I get that. And they go with people who get bums on seats. They go with people who are more psychic than mediumship. So we can dumb it down. Mediumship, the quality, the caliber can deteriorate yet further still. Alternatively, we can have a focus upon raising the standards. We can have a focus upon getting really good quality teachings out there, getting the really good understanding of what mediumship is out there, and doing a concerted effort by everybody in the movement, by everybody in every organisation, by all teachers, by all students to go for the best quality caliber teachings they can get and to work to the highest possible standards. And then we have a future where we're raising the standards rather than a future where it's all been dumbed down. So I feel it's a crossroads. The reality will fall probably somewhere within those two pathways. There's kind of a path all within where it can go. But for me, one thing we have to do is to put out their teachings of good quality and make them available for free. Make them available for almost a nominal sum. Because right now there's such a lot that's free. You can spend hours sifting through stuff on the internet, sifting through stuff on YouTube and never pay for a piece of teaching in your life. So if that's the case, we need as teachers, as organisations, to put out some of our own good quality, high quality content that dispels some of these myths, misconceptions and misunderstandings. Somebody who I very much looked up to is a lady called Vi Kipling. I don't know if any of you know or have heard of Vi Kipling. Vi Kipling was instrumental in founding SNUI. She taught online on a number of other platforms, and she recognised this big need across the world and within the UK of some form of online presence. And so she was instrumental in doing that, primarily to dispel myths, misconceptions and misunderstandings relating to mediumship and spiritualism. And she's written a book all about myths and misconceptions as well, which is highly recommend you read that as well. Very good book. But right now, I still feel that need that she spotted back then is still present, ever present. And it's a clear and present danger for our movement as well. Because when we hear people teaching that if you go into trance, you'll die. If you do this, something terrible will happen to you. And there's a lot of aspects that get confused with it, a lot of new age aspects. There's a lot of things come in with archangels, ascended masters, a lot of concepts that don't really belong within what I call pure spiritualism. We've got the tarot, the astrology, the psychic. We've got and shamanism, all sorts of things that are starting to work their way in. I know Gordon was against trying to keep that out and keeping pure spiritualism. Now, I've got no gripe with any of those disciplines in their own right, but I don't think we need to overlay them on mediumship. I don't think they add anything to mediumship personally. So right now I feel there's a real need for quality to be put out there into the world, for quality to be shared, for quality to go out, touch people and uplift people. And that's how I feel really by doing that, by making use of technology, by making use of where people will find their information. As the SNU, we can bring out high quality teachings. We can put those teachings out in front of people. And certainly to quite a good degree in this last year with the lockdown, we've seen that through the recordings on the SNU channel, on the SNUI YouTube channel. That has, for me, that is really a positive thing. And I would hope that even when all of this ends and we go back to some degree of normality, that those presences will be maintained online, that the Arthur Findlay College will maintain online teaching, that the SNU will maintain its online presence in that way still, because it's powerful in the way it can reach people. So that's my view. As I say, it's all my own belief. Whenever we teach, talk about things, it's always our own opinion. I come at it from my own angle. I'm sure many of you have got completely opposite, possibly contrasting opinions to me as well, and that's wonderful. But I do feel that if we are to move forward, we have to carry that banner that our great mediums of old brought forward of quality first, of standards, of doing it for the right reasons, of it being part of something greater. It's God's work. It's work of service to the two worlds. It's powerful. It contains a power to touch souls. We should never forget it. When we just make mediumship going to get a message, going to hear from your loved one, it diminishes it. We need to keep it as that powerful tool. That Spirit wants us to know. That Spirit wants to awaken us to their presence, but awaken us to our own true spirit nature. So I've probably gone on for much more than half an hour, but that's my that's my take on it. Yeah, I agree with absolutely everything you say. Everything you said fits pretty much with exactly how I feel. And I'm not sure if I mentioned the humility of the great mediums old, but it was always there. You know, the work for Spirit went first. They were second. They may have been famous because of their work, but they never chose the fame, and they dealt with the fame, but it came because of the caliber of their work. And they had integrity, and we have to have that. And this is again what I was saying with spiritual development. We've got to have that integrity. It really has to be present. For me, the top class mediumship, the best mediumship I will ever see, is mediumship where the presence and the love of Spirit is generated and felt within the room, so everybody knows Spirit is there as a healing power and it touches souls. Helen Hughes was known as Helen of Love because everybody felt the presence and love of Spirit when she demonstrated. Everyone was touched by that love. And one thing that I read an article about her, and I'll just mention this if anyone's never heard of it, because it fascinated me. She emanated love from Spirit. And I for me, it was a revelation. I suddenly thought, would my mediumship be any different if I seek to blend with Spirit and just seek to allow that love to emanate through me, to be deliberately asked to be the channel of love? And that made a big difference to my own mediumship. And people would say to me they can feel the presence of their loved one there. As mediums, we must surrender to what needs to come through us. We mustn't control it. We mustn't seek to impose obstacles or hurdles. Give me a car registration number, give me a name. We should just, Spirit know what they need to communicate. Our job is to blend, surrender, let it flow through us and be the clearest channel we can to allow it to touch souls, to allow it to touch where it needs to be in the audience, to allow the power of Spirit to do its work. That is a proper quality medium who can do that. But sadly, in this day and age, the higher quality we become, the more famous we become, the greater the expectations become, and the greater that gets in the way, because there is that expectation that if you're a big name, you should be good. And there's that expectation that all the audience are waiting for it all. So it takes a very strong medium within their own mind and beliefs to be able to let go of all of that and just humbly serve Spirit and allow Spirit to do what they do. You spoke about sometimes you see a medium who's good and the next time you see the medium who's not so good. I think as mediums we all work within a range from our best day versus our not so good day. But for me it's all about moving that up and moving the quality up, so that Gordon Higginson's worst demonstration was still probably better than most people's good demonstration. But his best demonstration would blow your mind, and I'll put it on the Gordon Higginson website this week so you can see what I'm talking about. Fabulous evidence. So they worked on self. They realized they never stopped developing. Their mediumship was forever changing, and they had to learn to adapt. We have to do that as mediums. Our mediumship will never stay static. Gordon was capable of the most phenomenal names, addresses and dates back in the 40s and 50s. But in the 70s, 80s, 90s, his mediumship shifted and changed. Well, he wasn't any worse as a medium, but the quality of evidence he got began to change in different types. So as mediums, we have to learn to adapt. I'm going to answer your question about a lot of mediums who stop developing. Because for me, we never stop developing. I know that I can be better. And I know that every day I'm alive on this planet, I have to push to develop my own mediumship. But some people get to a point where they think that when they hit a certain level, when I'm a church medium on the platform, on the circuit, that's enough. I've arrived. I can stop there. I can relax. My job is now to teach other people. But no, your job is to be better still. Your job is to be better next year than you are this year. And if we stand still, we stagnate, and it's not good. So definitely we have to push ourselves, and that is part of spiritual development. What do I teach for spiritual development? And I teach a lot. I did do a course on spiritual development I put out there. It was 4 2-hour classes. But for me, spiritual development is about unfolding the spiritual qualities that we all contain within us. Those qualities that you associate with the most spiritual people you can think of. Love, compassion, understanding, empathy, all those different spiritual qualities. But it's developing ourselves as a human being, but then allowing that developed spirituality to play its part within our own mediumship. That's what, for me, what it's all about. It's about when we recognize that because we are human, when we make mistakes, we learn from it, we move forward. We're allowing it's our soul, that spiritual aspect of self, the higher self, the soul, call it what you will, we're allowing it to play a greater role in our everyday life, and particularly a greater role within the development and within our unfoldment and within our work as for spirit, so that our work becomes work for the soul first and foremost, but work for spirit as well, which is what the great mediums had. They had this service, they had this dedication, and that's what we need. When we make that commitment, when we bring that forward, then we start to change. I think if you only learn mechanically and not spiritually, you'll struggle. That's really, I agree with what you're saying. Mediums of the past, there wasn't that commercialism, and because of that, there wasn't that pressure there neither, I believe. It was done for love. Everyone was expected to work for free, to work for love. And how many people would want to do mediumship if they could never earn a penny from it? If you were to say to somebody, okay, you can do it, but you'll never, other than your expenses, that's all you'll get. And that's how it was for the mediums of old. And how many, I know a lot of people who will only, I'm trying to pick my words carefully here, I know some people who will only allow access to them for a certain price, and I disagree with that. I put a lot of free stuff on YouTube. I'm happy to do free things like this to share, because we have to make ourselves accessible. We have to make quality teachings accessible, because if we don't, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, the movement a disservice, and spirit a disservice. So for me, I definitely feel that and I was taught early on that when you do the right thing, when you're doing it for the right reasons, when you work from the right motivation, spirit will always look after you. You might not get what you want, but you'll get what you need. You'll get enough. And I firmly believe that. So for me, I know if we work for spirit with the right intent, to a certain degree, we will be cared for. That's my own belief, but you may disagree. My topic tonight was mediumship, so I deliberately didn't talk about speaking, because I could talk about speaking for quite a while as well. And as you probably gather. And, back in the days when I'm talking about a lot of these mediums, Helen Hughes, she didn't do the speaking. It was Maurice Barbanel who toured with her doing it. Or they had Hannon Swaffer working with Estelle Roberts doing the speaking. They had the separate speaker from the demonstrator. Gordon originally was always the demonstrator, never the speaker. But as many of you will have heard Gordon speak, and he could be the most phenomenal inspirational speaker. Absolutely. But that's what I believe would come back to this development of the spiritual within ourselves. By developing the spiritual divine, by developing our connection with spirit, by working on that level, we all become capable of excellent inspirational speaking, if we allow it to unfold and we take an interest. But a huge number of people don't want to learn speaking, don't want to train on that part of it. They want to go to the mediumship, which is the glory part of it, the exciting part of it, forgetting that every service on a Sunday is part mediumship, part speaking. We have the prayers is speaking as well. And so for me, we have to give it the right balance. I often say in my own teachings that 5% of the training, you'd be lucky if that was on the address, and 95% would be on the mediumship. I'd like to see it much more balanced, and I'd like to see mediums deliver much better addresses and inspirational speaking, because that is the message for the entire audience. When you go to a demonstration of mediumship and there's 30 people in the audience, on a Sunday maybe 5 will get a link, or 6, but the rest, they're reliant upon what the medium brings forward in the address. And Spirit know what people need to hear, if only we can open inspirationally to allow that through, to allow that to touch souls, to allow that to hit home, to allow the presence of Spirit and the power of Spirit to do its work. So I'm in total agreement on inspirational speaking as well. I love inspirational speaking, I love mediumship, I love trance, I love healing, I love it all. I'm passionate about it all. But definitely, and some people are better speakers than they are mediums, and some people are better mediums than they are speakers. But we can work across all of it. I believe we all have the potentials within us. And all the great mediums of old became great speakers, and all of them did trance to a very high caliber. And it's there. The trance normally comes in much later for most of them, but it's there and it unfolds naturally as part of that spiritual development if there's a desire to do it. It's all about furthering our blend, our relationship with Spirit, to the point where we allow Spirit to play a role in our lives. Yeah, that is a really important thing to, spiritualism and mediumship has to appeal to all ages, absolutely. And certain churches you go to, we don't see enough younger people. And we have to modernise it. Gordon Higginson always used to talk about the need to modernise spiritualism. And that was back before he passed in the late 80s and 90s. He even discussed calling churches centres and, moving away from some of the older fashioned hymns or the older fashioned layouts that don't. So he always said we shouldn't try to ape Christianity. We should be our own religion in our own right. But many of the old mediums were Christian before they began to become mediums. So we have that legacy that comes through with our old blue hymn books and things. But for me, if we can get it being more contemporary, in our own church in Hampton Hill on a Sunday, we include contemporary songs like Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, Imagine, and various songs like that. And we try and keep it. We try and keep a nod to the past, but an eye to the future to try and bring the two together. And I'd say as well, something else that I was going to think of talking about, but I didn't, but I might mention now actually, is I remember talking to a guy who ran a church, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but he was telling me, we're struggling. There's this new centre open up just down the road, and it's full, and all the young people go there, and all we've got within our church now are us oldies. And we can't compete with them. I said, what do they do? He said, well, they offer demonstrations and services, just like we do. And I said, that's great. So you're doing the same thing. I said, what else do they do? Oh, well, they've got this stall selling all sorts of gifts and things. I said, that's a good idea. What could you do that? Oh, no, we couldn't do that. That would spoil the energy of our church. I said, what else do they do? And he said, well, they've got to do healing either before or after the demonstrations and services. I said, that's a great idea. Could you do that? Oh, no, our healers wouldn't come out. It's hard enough to get them out anyway on whatever day of the week it is. They wouldn't come out for that. And everything he told me they did. And I said, can you do that? And he was like, there was an excuse or a reason why they couldn't do it. And he said, oh, as well, they're doing a service at a time that suits everybody. And I said, well, could you do that? It's like, oh, well, we like to cater for the old people in the morning, because if we don't do that, we'll lose them. And it's like, yeah, but that might stop you getting other people in the evening. So there's a huge number of reasons. And the whole point of the story was that the other centre was actually catering for everybody's needs. What everybody needed to go along and hear from their loved ones, to go along and get a bit of healing, to go along and be in a positive, vibrant energy with really positive songs, because they had positive songs. And he said, oh, no, we like the old hymns. And I said, well, in that case, yes, you got your answer, really, that everything they're doing caters to a younger generation. So I think we have to do that. We have to be open to changing, to evolving, to progressing, so that we can ensure that mediumship stays accessible to all. And particularly mediumship as well. When I first started in mediumship and I was in my 30s, I was a relatively young man. And people used to say, oh, it's lovely to have a young medium on stage. Now I'm not young anymore, but but we need more of that as well. It's better to have that variety. Absolutely. So I don't know if that's helped you.
If you found this video helpful, then do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this.